What is up, gamers? We are back once again, and today we've got a really good one for you guys. These are the best DPS specials in a list. I'm going to do top 10 here. That will complement your other DPS heavy weapons. So these are going to be what you're really going to want to pair with your weapons to get an absolute insane DPS rotation that will just nuke everything. So, starting off here, we have Mountaintop. Mountaintop is amazing. I've heard people describe it as a mini Izanagi's Burden, and that's exactly how it functions with auto-loading holster to swap to it, shoot, swap back. It's always been a great perk. And recombination, elemental final blows increase the damage of this weapon's next shot. You can get that stacked really high, and it will do insane amounts of damage. Especially enhanced, I really should enhance mine because I got the god roll and it's just amazing. But yeah, this thing, you can swap to this, shoot, swap back. If it has high stacks of recombination, it'll do mass damage, and it's a really good option to pair with stuff. And honestly, it's great in any source of content because it's not bad at sticking majors. It, of course, will do good in DPS, and it even has a movement function when it got reworked. So, just really, really, really good grenade launcher, and one I really recommend. You can use it pretty much anywhere. Number 9, we have Wastelander. Now, pretty much any 1-2 punch shotgun can go here. It doesn't really matter since they're pretty much all the same in this slot. But, I personally think that Wastelander is the best because Lead from Gold with 1-2 punch is my personal favorite. It's just so good. You basically have infinite 1-2 punch shots because you'll be using it with melees all the time, so it also helps you conserve ammo better. So it's just really, you'll always have 1-2 punch at the ready. It is the absolute best weapon to have with a melee build. Any sort of melee build on any class, it doesn't matter. If you have a 1-2 punch shotgun, you will crank insane amounts of damage. And when the boss is close enough, if you have it at like peak melee range, it is the absolute best build that you can use, in my opinion. It's just, it'll shred things. It's awesome. At number 8, we have Succession, one of my absolute favorite snipers, a lot of people's favorite snipers. We have both a Into the Light version and a Deep Stone Crypt version of the sniper. The god roll is the same. Well, actually, there are 2 god rolls that I would chase after, being Reconstruction Vorpal and Reconstruction Recombination. Reconstruction Recombination would be the more burst damage roll. It would kind of function how Mountaintop did when I was showing you that before. Just switch to it, bang, big damage, maybe crank out a couple more shots and then switch back. With Vorpal, it is a little more consistent. You will always have these perks available, so you have absolutely no setup to DPS with this weapon. But I do think Recombination overall will probably do a little more. So it just depends on your playstyle, really. And, like, how that all works. If you're going to be doing a lot of ad clear, no. It depends on the build as well. But just all around goated sniper. It's one I love. Yeah. Really, really good DPS weapon right here. Number 7. We have the Aramite. Now, I do have the pattern for this thing, but I do not currently have it crafted just because I use some fusions more. There it is right there. So, Aramite is a DPS fusion. It's one I've really come to like with the buff to its frame. The high impact frame. This thing completely shreds. Its main god roll is Envious Assassin and obviously not Elemental Capacitor, but Controlled Burst. You can get a ton of bullets in the mag with Envious and then absolutely melt people. For longer damage phases, this thing is kingly, and it will just shred, especially if you're using something like Tractor Cannon. Any good DPS fusion, something like Aramite or Scatter Signal, Nox Perennial, one of those, are just so good to pair with tractor cannon, or if you're using like any sort of support weapon. Honestly, these are just so good to pair with it because they just crank damage. They're really best for like long DPS scenarios, and you can just absolutely melt a boss with these. These are awesome. Okay, number 6, Wild Style. A lot of people are going to be surprised how high this is on the list. Some people might be surprised how it got on here at all. But I don't think people realize the power of this grenade launcher. Not only does it have an adept version, it can get Envious Assassin or Reconstruction, both being great DPS perks, and something like Bait and Switch, or I believe it gets Vorpal 2 in this column, which are both amazing. Now, if you do have the Bait and Switch roll, which I do, I would very much not recommend using this with anything that also has Bait and Switch, because you'll proc Bait and Switch on both weapons, and sometimes that can it can make for a really strange rotation, and you'll have to constantly proc Bait and Switch, and it won't work very well. It might sound good to have two that have Bait and Switch, but it really doesn't. So if you're usually maining something in the heavy slot that has Bait and Switch, I would go for Vorpal instead of Bait and Switch. But if you're not, if you're using like a machine gun or something with target lock, maybe, I don't know, I would go with Bait and Switch on this grenade launcher. But as I was saying, it has an adept version. Blinding grenades is just useful everywhere, and nobody will ever convince me otherwise. As I said, Reconstruction, Envious. I got both of them on this, which is just absolutely wild. And they're both incredibly good DPS options. It just depends on your playstyle. I like Reconstruction a little more, so I can get more out of the grenade launcher. Yeah, you can just DPS with your heavy, swap to this, shoot 2 shots, which will both blind and probably do big damage depending on your perk in the second column, and then switch right back and keep DPSing with your heavy. It's really, really good. And since it's a double fire, especially if you hit both grenades, it actually does way more damage than most people expect. So just really, really, really powerful there. Alrighty, number 5, Arcane Embrace. This new shotgun has already made an absolute blast in the community, being the first ever heavy burst shotgun, which functions just as Warden's Law does, which it fires 2 slug rounds. So functions just like a slug, except it shoots 2 per shot. And Trench Barrel is currently glitched on this weapon. It's not even supposed to have Trench Barrel, which is the crazy part. So, in a melee damage scenario, this thing is doing completely broken levels of damage. Because Trench Barrel, now on this weapon, functions like it did way back when we first got the Ikello shotgun in Warmind season, like the 3rd season of Destiny 2, where it would just completely melt bosses. Yeah, that's what this thing is doing right now. It is completely destroying everything, and it's just an amazing option overall. Even if you don't use this Trench Barrel roll, it can get stuff like Precision Instrument. I've seen people using it with Grave Robber, which might be crazy, but actually it does get a lot of reloading with Grave Robber, and it will actually crank out surprising and honestly shocking levels of damage. It's just, if you are a slug fan, this is the absolute best weapon for a slug right now. It's just amazing, and I really recommend it. I already enhanced mine, as you can see, so just really, really, really good. Alright, number 4 is another brand new weapon in Sovereignty. This is one of the best snipers I have ever seen. When I glanced upon the perk roll, I was looking at my Dim app. Shout out to Dim. Not sponsored, by the way. I just love that app. I was looking through perks of the new weapons. When I got to the sniper, this thing's rolls, I seriously, my jaw dropped at the screen at how powerful this thing was. Explosive payload in the first column is absolutely what you want. Big damage buff there is incredibly effective. And in the second column, you can go for either precision instrument or withering gaze. Withering gaze giving weaken and having explosive payload to pair with that, you'll not only be getting good DPS from the sniper with explosive payload, you'll also be getting the utility of weaken to increase the damage of all your teammates and your weapons to just absolutely melt a boss. I think this is a absolute must-have in your arsenal. And precision instrument explosive payload is the more solo player role, to just sit in the back of the map, and if you can consistently hit headshots, this thing will do an atrocious amount of damage. Like, it is crazy powerful. Atrocious is probably not the right word, to be honest, but super, super powerful. Really recommend it, and it's really easy to get. Okay, number 3. Another weapon I do not currently have. This is one I actually have never acquired, but obviously I know of its power. I've seen clips, and it's amazing. Supremacy! Where's the new one? New one. Is it not in collections? Or am I just blind? Huh. Maybe I'm blind. But anyways, Supremacy is completely topping the charts. I think everybody knows of this thing's power, but I'm going to go over it anyways. You can completely melt everything with Supremacy. Like, its role of rewind rounds and 4th times the charm, pairing that with Divinity or a boss that just has a natural massive crit box, you can dump hundreds of rounds into the boss. Hundreds. Like, it is absolutely shocking how much damage you can put out with this thing. If you're at the right range and it has the right crit size, or there's a Divinity user on your team, there is almost no option that even compares to it. Not even exotics, which is wild. Oh, side note that I did forget to mention, I was doing legendaries. I did try to avoid secondaries because everyone would already know what would be on that list. Still Hunt, Choir of One, Cloud Strike. I mean, everybody would already know. Nobody would click on the video. So, yeah, we're just doing legendary DPS specials that are just going to be, yeah. Supremacy, just absolute great option if you don't have it. Massively recommend it. I really need to do some Last Wish to get me one myself, because, whoo boy, I need it. Alrighty, number 2, we have one of my absolute favorite all-time weapons. I just love this thing. Scatter Signal. Oh my gosh, what do I have to say about this weapon? I use it everywhere. Every single DPS option. If the boss is close enough where I can hit most of my pellets, absolutely using this. Controlled Burst, Overflow. Overflow works very, very well on this weapon. And it'll just load big amounts of ammo into the weapon. Usually you'll have almost all of the reserves in your weapon. And pairing it with Controlled Burst on a rapid fire frame, the amount you can dump into a boss is completely shocking. It puts out damage that I can't even fathom. Like, almost always, one of my absolute favorite builds is using this with Blade Fury and Tractor Cannon. It works so well. I'll go in and Tractor, Blade Fury, get a massive amount of damage out of that. Tractor again and switch to Scatter Signal and do massive damage with that. It cranks unbelievable amount of damage, and it's a great melee build. If you're not really a shotgun fan, this thing is an awesome alternative, and sometimes even does a lot better depending on your build. So, super, super powerful. Massively recommend. And alright, let's get to the honorable mentions before we get to the number 1 spot. First, Embraced Identity. Man, this thing is good. This is basically the alternative weapon to Supremacy. It gets the exact same roll. The only problem with it is its frame is adaptive, not rapid fire, so it really doesn't work the same, and also it is a little bit harder to aim it because rapid fire has less recoil. So if you're just dumping shots, when I've been using this, I have been found to miss a couple shots, and that can kind of mess with stuff. Also, the magazine is not as big, so it doesn't work as well, but it's still very, very effective. Rewind rounds 4 times the charm. Just get massive, massive ammo procs. Just a great roll overall. If you don't have a Supremacy and you really, really don't want to go into the raid, I would absolutely farm this. It comes from Final Shape. Really, really easy to get. All you have to do is, go do some overthrow. It'll get go farm class items by doing overthrow and stuff. While you're doing that, you're going to get a bunch of Pale Heart engrams anyway. And you can just dump them into Embraced Identities, and eventually you'll get the pattern. And this is just a really good roll, so massively recommend. But if you can get a Supremacy or a Succession, I would probably recommend both of those over this, even though it's still very, very powerful. Okay, Valeda F is a World Loot Pool weapon, actually, now, that gets Withering Gaze. This is a perk I've talked about before. I've talked about it on the podcast. Go follow it. It's on Spotify. It's 10 Star Talks, a Destiny 2 podcast. Go follow that. I talked about this perk on my latest episode. It is incredibly powerful. One of the best DPS perks I think that's been added in years. Instant application of Weaken and being able to use it with a secondary. The only reason that it's not in the actual list is because Sovereignty can get it with explosive payload, so it's significantly better roll. But Valeda F is a little bit more accessible. Literally any player can get this. It's completely free, and it gets access to that incredibly, incredibly powerful perk, and that alone is enough to get it into this list, at least in the honorable mention slot. So, just really great sniper. I also like the frame. As much as a lot of people don't, I actually kind of enjoy aggressive frame snipers because they give you a second to regroup after your shot and still crank out great damage. And honestly, with Withering Gaze, I would prefer something that hits hard because you do have to aim for a second before you shoot. So I would kind of go with that. Alright, next honorable mention. Names Lance is a great sniper. Now, I definitely do not have the God roll, but Reconstruction and I believe Precision Instrument? Yeah, Reconstruction Precision Instrument is my personal God roll, and I think most people's God roll, and that will definitely do a lot of damage. If you're consistently hitting crits, that's great. Being a rapid fire frames are just kind of the king of snipers right now. So that's just kind of what you want to use. So just really, really effective there. The one problem with this is it is from Warlord's Ruin, so you are gonna have to go into a dungeon to farm it. And yeah, it's also, I don't believe it's enhanceable or craftable. At least it's not showing me that it is. Maybe it's because I got this before Final Shape came out. Maybe it is enhanceable. I'm not sure. You'll have to look into that on your own time, but it might not be enhanceable either. I know it's not craftable, but it might not be enhanceable, but I don't know. So yeah, just really, really good, consistent sniper, but there are better options. So lots of snipers on this list. But honestly, snipers just have really good DPS perks anyway. Final honorable mention, Nox Perennial. This one, I actually had a good roll of Nox Perennial, but I deleted it because I decided that I would never really use it over Scatter Signal. Where is Nox Perennial? You're in here somewhere. Where are you? There you are. This thing gets the exact same roll as Eremite, being Envious Assassin and Controlled Burst, and that's just a really effective roll. It has the same frame as well. They're very, very similar weapons, but I do think overall Eremite has the better perk pool, so you don't have to get the exact roll for it to be so good. Also, Wild Card is not going to help you. It just isn't. Head Rush is a little bit better, but still not very effective. And also, my personal problem with Nox Perennial, this is just an opinion thing, but I absolutely hate that sight with a absolute burning passion. I just hate the box sights that they just take up so much of your screen, and it's just awful. I hate them. That's just a personal preference thing. To be honest, this thing is basically the exact same weapon as Eremite. I would definitely prefer Eremite over this, but it kind of is up to personal preference. I do think Eremite does have the better overall perk pool as well, so. A lot of people would probably think, like, where is the VS Velocity Baton? Because, okay, where... Grenade launchers. Oh my gosh, I'm blind. My bad, guys. Anyway, though, a lot of people would probably think that this should be on the list, and people might be shocked, like, why is it not? That's because looking through this thing's perks, although it is the area denial frame, which is absolutely topping charts for DPS right now, all of its perks are basically completely bent to add clear. Like, not reconstruction. What? Repulsor brace and destabilizing rounds, like Adagio. I forgot the other ones. I think it has like Demolitionist and Killing Winds, stuff like that. Just a lot of add clear perks. So when I was looking through the rolls, I was just like, this does not have a good DPS roll. So I don't think it made the list, but I had to give it a shout out because I think a lot of people would be mad if I didn't. Another one that people might be shocked about is Gravitic Arrest, but honestly, its only good perk for DPS is Withering Gaze. It does get Withering Gaze, but I would much rather prefer Withering Gaze on a sniper, so something like Veleda F or Sovereignty I would definitely use over this. This thing, what it's kind of been so great for is its like add clear potential and like grenade potential, because it generates a lot of grenade energy from what I saw. So that would be very effective. Yeah, so this one isn't very bent towards DPS either. So, the number one spot, in my opinion, is none other than the King Lost Signal. This thing is the area denial frame that I mentioned with VS Velocity Baton, and it gets the absolute best roll that I think it could possibly get, being Vorpal and auto-loading. Auto-loading is just great on any grenade launcher. Honestly, I think if any grenade launcher has auto-loading, it already has potential. Just, you holster it, it'll reload, you can DPS with your other weapons, pairs really well with a bait-and-switch weapon. Love auto-loading for that. And Vorpal is just great on this thing, gives a pretty decent chunk of DPS. I think it's a 15% damage buff. I might be wrong, and they might have nerfed it. I don't know. But I think it's, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 15% damage buff on specials, and it's just an incredibly effective roll. Stability is improved. Interesting. Yeah, just incredibly effective. You can use it almost anywhere. Sticking a boss with this and then, like, charging into your super is so incredibly effective. It's the greatest thing to switch to in my opinion. And it has great ad clear potential as well. It can do almost everything. It is just, I think it's the best special weapon in the game right now. That's just my opinion, but especially for DPS, it is the best special DPS weapon in the game right now. That's legendary. That is definitely isn't better than Still Hunt or like Choir of One or anything, but yeah, it's just completely topping the charts right now. Obviously, it doesn't do that much on its own, but when you fire it and then you DPS with something else, it lasts really long. This thing is basically Wither Horde, honestly. It's just so incredibly effective. I can't emphasize it enough. So, massive recommend. It's so easy to get. Just go do Echo stuff and you'll get it so easily. So easy to get. Incredibly powerful. Incredibly good roll. Insanely easy to get the crafted version. I mean, plus after plus after plus. Massive recommend. So that'll be all. I hope you guys enjoyed. This is one I actually was definitely excited to make, even though I'm kind of doubting it's going to get a lot of views because kind of a niche subject. Also, yeah, I think you know what I mean. So, I hope you guys enjoyed. That'll be all. I'll see you guys later. Bye.